Dr. Wan Junaidi, Minister of Entrepreneur Development and Cooperatives, Yang Berbahagia Dato Muhammad Montek, Secretary General of MIDEC, Mr. Michael Walsh, Chief Executive of the Pacific Basin Economic Council, participating virtually from Hong Kong, Mr. Cho Lee, Editor-in-Chief of China Daily, participating from Beijing, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, selamat datang, dan salam sejahtera. I'm pleased to welcome here the Honorable Minister to the Asia Economic Summit, organized by KSI in conjunction with PBAC and China Daily. I'm also delighted to welcome here the ambassadors and high commissioners who are participating with us from UK, Australia, and Japan. I wish to also welcome our very many speakers and participants who are not only here in this hall, but participating virtually online with us. We have virtual participants and speakers today from Bangkok, Hong Kong, Tokyo, New Delhi, Sydney, Brisbane, and Beijing. The Asia Economic and Entrepreneurship Summit is an annual event organized to enhance regional dialogue and global cooperation. In this COVID pandemic era, we need to further strengthen regional and international cooperation. This period can perhaps be, as Charles Dickens wrote in his book, The Tale of Two Cities, the best of times and the worst of times. There is also the Chinese word for crisis, wei ji, which consists of two characters denoting danger and opportunity. And this is what we now face in this new normal, where there are both dangers and opportunities facing the world, the region, and our country. In the new normal, we need to address many challenges, and we have, in the early session this morning, heard from our speakers the overview of how Asia-Pacific region will stack up. We hope the other sessions today will address also the opportunities that lie ahead of us. We have in our analysis found that there are perhaps 5 major new areas or opportunities for business to look at in this period. Firstly, the startups and digitalization space. Secondly, health and aged care. Thirdly, learning or online education. And fourthly, the food business, particularly food delivery. And we think these are the new opportunities that Malaysian and regional entrepreneurs can perhaps develop and cooperate. We need to further enhance also regional dialogue and strengthen cooperation in economic development, environmental protection, healthcare, and education, as well as stronger protection of human rights, an area that I'm particularly concerned with in my other hat as chairman of PROHAM, the Society for Promotion of Human Rights in Malaysia. Regional cooperation also needs to focus on food security, public health security, human security, and cyber security. Countries and companies face enormous challenges as we embark on the post-COVID recovery journey. Malaysia has come up with the recovery plan. Many other countries are also doing so. So the sharing of ideas, of exchange of experiences would be perhaps very useful. Transformation is a new normal. We need government transformation, business transformation, as well as social transformation. And we see many of these transformational exercises being carried out in government departments, in companies, as well as in SMEs, adapting to this new normal. I believe that Asian Pacific countries can learn from one another by sharing experiences in their transformational journey. We wish to also call on government, business communities, and civil society in Asia to work closely together to achieve the SDGs and to prioritize the SDGs in both national and regional cooperation. We hope that the 4 E's and the 4 I's can also be looked into. The 4 E's are economic development, environmental protection, employment, and education. The 4 I's being investment, innovation, infrastructure, and inclusiveness. I believe these are key issues that we need to focus upon. Let me end by once again thanking our speakers who are present here physically and zooming in from overseas. Thank you to our many sponsors and our strategic partners for your support. And once again, let me thank the Honourable Minister, Yang Berhormat Dato Sri Dr. Wan Junaidi, for taking time off your very busy schedule to be present with us this morning. Sekian, terima kasih.
Thank you, Tan Sri. I would now like to invite Mr. Michael Walsh, Chief Executive of the Pacific Basin Economic Council, to give his welcome speech via Zoom.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having PBEC this morning at this very important summit. To Dr. Haji Wan Junaidi, Excellencies, Ministers, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, Professors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, especially during these challenging times and busy times during this COVID recovery. Special thanks to the Kingsley Strategic Institute for organising this summit. We are very pleased at PBEC to be partnering and supporting Tan Sri Michael Yeoh and his team in enabling dialogue between government officials and the private sector, which is important to us. We value these important dialogues, especially during these times, to engage and advocate, support initiatives that come out from these events and share what the private sector requires in enabling regulatory reform in the region. I want to just refer to our first panelist this morning already, where there was very interesting dialogue and great things being said. One in particular about Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia mentioned that we should maybe perhaps no longer refer to the region as Asia-Pacific, but instead regard it as the Indo-Pacific. That's Asia-Pacific plus India. It's an interesting concept. Pacific Basin is PBEC is one of the oldest institutions in Asia. Its name originates from the Pacific Basin, so that includes all countries with a Pacific coastline. However, in my tenure so far in the last 18 months as CEO, I have witnessed and encouraged countries from further afield, including the UK in a post-Brexit world, to encourage them to engage through institutions like Michael's and ours in order to understand the local environment in which to increase trade. We welcome these deeper collaborative links and relationships beyond our borders and beyond the regions at which we serve today. The future of Asia will to a large part be shaped by the economies of China, India, Japan and ASEAN countries, especially Malaysia, which can play a key role. Asia requires new economic growths that Michael's touched upon, certain sectors that will probably benefit, including e-commerce as a major part. But employment opportunities are really at an urgent point already. We're seeing high levels of unemployment during COVID in many developed countries as well as developing countries, and this will be a key factor and priority for governments in the region. Education will play a huge part. We've had previous discussions about the upskilling requirements in order to adapt to a more digital-focused economies. And of course, we cannot ignore the environmental sustainability factors. During these times, entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship typically comes to the fore during crisis. But it feels to many that we are not as coordinated as we would have liked to, or that we thought we were, as being exposed during this COVID crisis, especially when it comes to international air travel and the fact that I can't be with you in person today. So these are issues that need to be urgently addressed, and by coming together, we can address these issues. I also want to touch very briefly about Dr. Eden Wan's point this morning, that Asian universities have an opportunity to attract now the top talent and top students. Talent flow and job creation, as I've mentioned, is going to be a key attribute to this COVID recovery. Whilst Dr. Eden Woon mentioned visa restrictions tightening for Asians going west to these universities, the same could be said about Western and expats in the job market coming to places like Singapore and Hong Kong. We need to be mindful how we addressing the local residents and nationals in making sure they have job opportunities and not necessarily deferring or declining talent coming the other way. So we need to be really mindful about borders, about visas, about restrictions, and how we implement this to take care of our own citizens, which is obviously a priority for governments, but also welcoming international talent to our shores. So localism is not just about trade, it's going to affect how international companies will expand in the future if we're not careful. E-commerce is obviously one way to adapt within the digital economy. And ASEAN bloc, for me, needs to come together even stronger. Obviously, Vietnam has been the chair this year and with difficult circumstances have addressed a lot of their in-trade. However, there's more work to be done, and I feel we can help with engagement between the private sector and government. So today's discussions are of utmost importance, and my hope is we can take some of these points raised forward and act on them collaboratively. So enjoy today and stay safe wherever you are as we look forward to working on a resilient, sustainable future together. Thank you from the Pacific Basin, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is now with great honor that I invite Yang Berhormat Dato Sri Dr. Haji Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar, Minister of Entrepreneur Development and Cooperatives Malaysia, to deliver the opening keynote address.
Thank you, and good morning. Tan Sri Michael Yeoh, President of KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific. Dato Sri Haji Muhammad bin Mentek, Secretary General, Ministry of Entrepreneur Development and Cooperatives. Mr. Michael Walsh, Chief Executive, Pacific Basin Economic Council. Mr. Zhao Li, Editor-in-Chief, China Daily Asia Pacific. Tan Sri Majid Khan, Deputy Chairman, KSI Strategic Institute, and Tan Sri Lee Kim Yu, Advisor to KSI Strategic Institute Asia Pacific. Excellencies, distinguished guest speakers, members of media, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to express my appreciation to the organizers, Tan Sri Michael Yeoh of KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific, Mr. Michael Walsh of PBC, and Mr. Zhao Li from China Daily, inviting me to this summit. Malaysia's economic growth has been going on rather steadily since 2010, with an average growth of 5.3%. However, the country is still exploring the right formula to sustain its economic competitiveness against emerging economies such as China, India, and Vietnam. However, in the 2016, the thought was that Malaysia would be able to advance forward to become the developed nation with high income status by 2030, provided we could maintain the growth of 6% GDP annually. But came 2018, the Malaysian economy grew by 4.3% only, in contrast to our ASEAN neighbors who fared better, as the economy of Indonesia, Philippines grew by 5.02% and 5.9% respectively. While Vietnam economy grew by impressive 7%. For Malaysia to maintain its present growth standing as the most competitive economy in ASEAN after Singapore, Malaysia needs to create more businesses and attract more foreign direct investment and investment opportunities. This can be done by growing the number of partnerships between government, entrepreneurship, and cooperative. However, Malaysia must ensure that the increased economic competitiveness must stem from inclusive, innovative, and sustainable growth. Based on official data from the Department of Statistics, the GDP for Malaysia stands at 1.4 trillion in 2019. Micro and small medium enterprises constitute 98.5% of the business establishment in the country and has long been the backbone of the Malaysian economy. The scenario of high concentration of the SME, of course, is not peculiar to Malaysia. It seems to be nationwide. The establishment of SMEs, respective economies of the world, is important to understand the composition of the economy in order to address the fundamental issues and challenges in order to spur the economic growth. In 2019, the SMEs in Malaysia continued to outperform the overall economy with an annual growth of 5.8% in terms of GDP contribution. SMEs growth contribute 38.9%. That is about 52.3 billion to the GDP of Malaysia 2019. In addition to that, SMEs respectively provide employment to 7.3 million people last year. Of course, this is pre-COVID and movement control order. However, after COVID, the turmoil peaks its head since the third quarter of 2019, when first it hit China. Being the most trading partner of many nations, including Malaysia, global supply chain was already disrupted as China closed its border. In the effort to contain the outbreak, companies in Malaysia were already feeling the heat and scrambling to find alternative source of raw material, which as I had mentioned to Tan Sri Lee earlier, that we don't have complete supply chain and we don't have the raw material. Even the production of the face mask, we had problem. Simple thing, and yet problematic. In facing the COVID-19, the government of Malaysia made a good decision by forming two committees. One committee to handle the MCO, Movement Control Order, that was in March. And the other committee to look into the economy of the country, of course, with the advice of the Economic Council chaired by the Prime Minister. The Movement Control Order in March 20 of that magnitude crisis really hit Malaysian shore, converting itself from mere health crisis into the full-blown economic crisis. Without an expiry date, we have not seen when it's going to end. The positive outlook of 2020 spiraled downward like it never before. Pre-COVID-19, 55% of the SME were anticipating an increase in sales. However, by March 2020, 72% had to temporarily close their business operation, with 59% recording no sale at all. 79% have cash only last them less than 3 months. 39% can only sustain their business for less than a month. The second quarter GDP dipped 17.1%. As the country went into lockdown with strong enforcement stemmed from spread of COVID-19, when sustainability of many businesses are affected, livelihood of the people will also be affected. The call for the public and private sector to move swiftly to work together to buffer the impact. The government is well aware of that. After nearly 2 months of MCO, the government was made to be aware. In the last meeting of the month of April, the Minister of Finance says, if we don't open business next month, every day will suffer loss of 2.5 billion per day. That was the biggest bombshell drop in the cabinet room. And we had no choice but to open up our economy. And go back to the committee that I mentioned. The chairman of the committee for MCO says, we open up, then we'll see the spike going to happen everywhere. Again, the government called to look into various ways and means, standard operating procedures for companies and businesses to open up. Otherwise, we will have to suffer the 2.4 billion and how to deliver the food on the table for the people of B40 and to generate income to give to the government to support the economy of the nation. Thus, again, we look, the economic competitiveness is not only judged by the term raw numbers as such grows bigger. When we open up, we talk about how to move forward, because the conventional method of doing business is no longer relevant at that time. We have to change. We have to move forward. Then the term of the new norm, the new normal came about. To increase the number of businesses, to initiate another way of doing businesses was the key word being said and spoken by government. So the competitiveness become the key word too. Instead, the rise in economic competitiveness also hinges on improvement performance of public service for business to create environment where entrepreneurial action were rewarded, whereby anybody can achieve social mobility. Fundamentally, the government must ensure entrepreneurs are to be given necessary windows of opportunity to grow, as the success can transform the economy and enhance industrial development. Economic Action Council is chaired by the Prime Minister to oversee and provide input on the management of the economy in crisis. The industrial captain of industry were to join in, invited to come to advise the government. When you are in this meeting, you can feel the burden of having to make difficult decisions, the balance between the measure to protect life through MCO and to generate economy so that the economic crisis should not be turned into financial crisis. The first MCO was necessary to protect the life, and to prolong MCO without flexibility will affect the livelihood of the people and also the economy of the nation. So close engagement between public and private sector took place to understand the exact issues and challenges on the ground and came up with the targeted measures to tackle them. Malaysia took the 3R approach to tackle the economic crisis, defecting relief, recovery, and reform. Evidence-based policy making is important to guide us in order to strategize for economic recovery. Relief. The first step taken was to introduce relief measures. Survey conducted on business immediately upon effective date of the MCO discovered that the most pressing challenge faced by the SME is a huge cash flow. This is exactly the word, money. 95% of the businesses were experiencing drop in sales, while expense like salaries, loan repayment, rental, utilities, statutory payment is still there to be made, to be incurred. That is why among the earliest interventions introduced through the Prihatin economic stimulus package include the measures to help businesses retain the cash in hand. This includes the wage subsidy program, 6-month moratorium on loan, discount on utility bill, deferment of tax and statutory payment. These measures gave business some breathing space to reassess the situation and to redraw their business strategy for them to survive the crisis and revive their businesses. Recovery, the third one. The second one. Relief measures were complemented by measures to facilitate recovery. The total of 280 billion was announced under the Prihatin package and another 35 billion under Pranjana package. Collectively, the inclusive stimulus package has benefited all walks of life, include B40, M40, SMEs, and others. The implementation and disbursement are closely monitored by Laksana, a team at the Ministry of Finance, and periodically reported to the Economic Action Council. V-shaped recovery could be seen starting May 2020. The unemployment rate in June 2020 declined to 4.9% and compared to 5.3% in May 2020. The industrial production index rebounded 26.2% on a month-to-month in June 2020, and wholesale and retail trade grew 21.8% in June compared with the previous months. These are some of the barometers depicting economic recovery, but more was needed to be done to make up for the setback we suffered in March and in April. Then the reform going forward, we have to accept that life will never be the same again after COVID-19. It pushes us to rethink and improvise and innovate. We should promote more local businesses to provide solutions to empower other businesses, including micro enterprises, to embrace technology adoption of a new normal. For instance, Yeoh, solution developed by Malaysian company, can empower businesses not only to sell online but also to manage its inventory, marketing through smartphone without even the need for a computer. It is evident that the right ecosystem crisis spark innovation. In the case, it is an inclusive innovation that aid wealth creation. My ministry, through SME Corp Malaysia, is supporting this kind of local businesses, empower other businesses to increase the uptake of technology adoption that can increase productivity and wealth creation. The momentum in introducing reform initiative will be carried through as we embark on the 12th Malaysia Plan, 2021 to 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 pandemic has also shown how successful public-private partnership can be for the country in terms of maintaining public health. This is evident as My Sejahtera app was developed by international renowned Malaysian firm called KP Salt Sdn Bhd in collaboration with the government for the tracking of the coronavirus outbreak in the country. The success of KPI Salt Sdn Bhd is attributed to the development with the guidance of Malaysian Digital Economic Corporation, MDEC, since its inception in 2010. Hence, KPI Sdn Bhd ability to develop apps that are used by the Fortune 500 companies alongside its successful development in My Sejahtera illustrate the success of partnership in assisting local innovative entrepreneurs expand internationally, thereby generating innovative growth. Moreover, the government must also encourage partnership among entrepreneurs and cooperatives themselves, as it is not possible for every firm to be partnership with the government. For example, Malaysian firm called Green Package Sdn Bhd has recently finalized a collaborative agreement with China Tencent Cloud, which will establish internet data center in Malaysia, which will deploy Tencent Cloud service locally. Private sector partnership must be grown because this partnership will ramp up digital transformation in Malaysia to exploit our potential or become cloud innovation, artificial intelligence hotbed in the region. In fact, the government has shown its commitment to innovate growth through the launching of National Technology and Innovative Sandbox, AEES, which relax rules of testing new technology such as self-driving cars. The NTIS is a collaborative effort to promote innovation, as its initiative was launched by the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, or MOSTI, in partnership with Malaysian Global Innovation and Creative Centre, or MAGIC, Technology Park Malaysia, Malaysian Technology Development Corporation, and the Futurist Sdn Bhd regulatory bodies to encourage submission of ideas and will accelerate Malaysia's technological innovation. This initiative is timely at a time when the country is reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic impact, which has put investment in innovation at risk. The sandbox reflects commitment to invest in innovation system where the R&D will be crucial in building post-pandemic economic base on innovation. However, for Malaysia to grow, that is inclusive, Malaysia must tackle the issue of training and education among entrepreneurs. Therefore, my ministry is collaborating with Ministry of Youth, Sport, Ministry of Higher Education, SME Bank, Young Entrepreneurs Innovation Program to increase youth and graduate involvement in business. We will also be launching Technopreneurship Program for fresh graduates, which aim to train 400 young graduates from local institutions of higher learning to explore career and technology-based entrepreneurship. Under this program, the ministry intends to enhance the training, education of aspiring entrepreneurs by guiding 20% of the 400 young graduates to become technopreneurs. Under the scheme, we can be sanguine in these trained technopreneurs will collaborate with each other in the future. However, not every aspiring entrepreneur will be involved in our training and education program. How then can we guarantee more partnership will generate inclusive growth? The answer is reforming the education system. Ladies and gentlemen, education transformation may come in the form of school and universities, emphasizing on entrepreneurial skill rather than looking for employment. In their courses and their training, students also must be taught about risk, finance, opportunities, and self-efficacy. This need to instill entrepreneurial ambition in young people at an early stage through entrepreneurial studies and co-curricular activities, because this will empower the young to utilize their business acumen. In fact, education system must be one that encourages those from deprived communities to believe in their passion by encouraging them to be leaders rather than simple employees. This will ensure no communities left behind by economic growth. There is also the need to stress growing partnership for sustainable growth, as Malaysia has long reaffirmed its commitment to support and implement the 2020 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goal. In the past, sustainable growth merely means growth that is repeatable. Today, the sustainability is even broader concept. It encompasses the idea of being repeatable, ethical, and responsible, whereby firms need to be environmentally aware, accountable, and responsible about ramification of their business activities. Focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 16, the government must promote access to justice for all, alongside being accountable, inclusive institution at all levels. With regard to having sustainable growth through people-centered initiative, this stresses the principle of justice for all. The government must take measures that will ensure that employment provides job security, stability, and adequate income. In fulfilling this agenda, it's vital that entrepreneurs and cooperatives pay their workers adequately. Wherein adequate does not mean simply to conform to the threshold provided by the government. However, the government recognized the concern raised by the Malaysian Employees Federation that the cost of entrepreneurship would be rising up if employers are forced to bear the increase in their wage scale. Therefore, the government should consider partnering entrepreneurs, cooperatives, to bear some portion of the cost of wage increment. Nonetheless, the onus is also on employees to be more productive, hardworking, to prove that the pay rise match the increase in their output that means they deserve their pay. The government, through SOCSO, may incentivize all entrepreneurs to register themselves, provide employees with social security protection. By doing so, entrepreneurs would benefit from the ability to access aid from the government, and in difficult times, such as the wage subsidy program, thereby rectifying the issues such as SME facing hurdle in accessing aid. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would like to conclude the speech by making it clear that unlocking business efficiencies by growing the number of partnerships between government, entrepreneurs, and cooperatives to ensure inclusive, innovative, and sustainable growth is not sufficient in enhancing Malaysia's economic competitiveness. Instead, Malaysia must also be more in building accountable, inclusive institutions congruent with the concept of sustainable development. With that, I thank you and wish you a perfectly good session ahead. Thank you.